students. Yeah, different background. We may have various backgrounds through the course of this next month or so. Who knows? We are here to start week 2, and in week 2 we are going to be covering the ancient Near East. In terms of where we are geographically, we're going to be hanging out in this region of the world. Now, I've put in ancient Near East and then in quotes the term Mesopotamia, because this is a term that is often used to describe this region and this time period in the history of human civilization. Even for me to say human civilization, that's an interesting word choice. I could have said the history of humanity, but I say human civilization because many historians, most historians, credit this region of the world as, quote, the cradle of civilization. It is because here in the ancient Near East, we find some of our oldest large human settlements, oldest large permanent human settlements. And so we're going to be looking at the rise of several of these settlements that become larger kingdoms and empires. And I'll explain the term Mesopotamia. However, before we go any further, I want you to be fully aware that we are going to be progressing through this class as a timeline through art history, and that timeline is going to be going more and more present, right? More and more up to the present, up to the Gothic. That can be confusing for some students because they will think that every day we are advancing in time. Yes and no. This timeline here is going to show you the various people, period styles, times, and geographic locations we're going to be looking at. And there are going to be moments in this class where I'm going to be advancing forward, and then the next week I'm going to say we need to rewind. And we're going to hop over to a different place, and we're going to look at what's happening concurrently, meaning at the same time. So here, today we're going to start looking at the Sumerian culture, the Akkadians, the Babylonians, and the Assyrians, and the Neo-Babylonians and the Persians. Next week, we're going to be looking at the Egyptians, and we're going to start with the pre-dynastic, then the Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom, and New Kingdom. Do you notice how we had to rewind? So it's not that the Sumerians are happening before the Egyptians. They are happening concurrently. It is not that the Assyrians are happening before the Middle Kingdom. They are happening concurrently. When we jump over to the islands in the Aegean Ocean, the Greek islands, we're going to be looking at cultures, the Minoan and the Mycenaean. I don't want you to think they come after the Assyrians, because they don't. They come before the Assyrians. So we're going to be advancing forward and then rewinding back and filling in more blanks. Does that make sense? If we were in class together, I'd say thumbs up. Does that make sense? That makes sense? Okay, let's move forward. Here we are in ancient Mesopotamia. As I said, it's another term used for the location, also referred to as the ancient Near East. This map here is showing you the region and the word Mesopotamia. Now you have to know that I love words and I love to break down words to their origins. So here I've helped you understand this word Mesopotamia. Meso, it comes from the Greek for middle, potamos, Potamia, potamos, Greek for rivers. So the word Mesopotamia is an ancient Greek word that means the middle of the rivers, or the land between the two rivers, because the ancient Greeks are referring to this region where we have two major river systems, the Euphrates and the Tigris. And the land between these two rivers is referred to as the Fertile Crescent. Another term, another thing that people often use. Fertile meaning, vibrant, lots of life. Crescent is the shape. This crescent shape of land here that is fed by the Euphrates and the Tigris offered a, fertile landscape. Lots of nutrients and lots of soil that had been cultivated by agriculture into a thriving region. We're going to be looking at the Sumerians and the beginning of, the cultures in the Fertile Crescent in Mesopotamia. We're then going to go north to the Akkadians. We're going to see the fall of the Akkadians and the rise of the Babylonians, and then the rise of the Assyrians, and then the takeover of the Persians. It's a lot to cover in this class. If at any time you find you have a greater interest in something that we just cannot get into in this class, email me. I would love to share that information with you, to share the knowledge and the enthusiasm. Let's get a little bit more cultural context before we jump specifically into our oldest of these cultures in Mesopotamia, the Sumerians. One of the reasons historians refer to the Fertile Crescent, Mesopotamia, as the cradle of civilization, the birth of civilization, is because it is here that we have our earliest examples of writing. And here we are looking at a clay tablet that has our earliest form of writing, referred to as cuneiform. Now, this is a definition and a vocab term, so write it down. Cuneiform, a system of writing used in ancient Mesopotamia in which wedge-shaped characters are produced by pressing a stylus into a soft clay tablet. And that is what we're looking at here. The writer has established a record, and these marks creating a grid pattern are helping to organize that information. Now, some of these tablets are written from left to right, some are written from right to left, some are written top to bottom, some are written bottom to top. There is no consensus among the pattern of how to write, because they're still forming these concepts of writing. Now, the development of the written language, as I've put my dates here, developed sometime around 3500, and it evolves over that 1,000-year period. It starts from pictograms, in which humans started to record based on visual elements that would then be abstracted. Here you can see how the pictogram, or the picture of a bowl, is being simplified into 4 shapes, and then has been abstracted to the concepts of not only bowl, but bread and food. This development is extremely interesting because we have been able to decode it and read it. About 90% of the cuneiform texts that survive are business and administration. It's all a bunch of record keeping, which makes sense. That's why humans developed writing. It was to keep track of things. Many of, or I should say most of the writing in the cuneiform tablets are simply records. This guy had 20 goats, and then he lent 10 of them to this guy. This flood came and knocked out this many acres of our city, and we have to rebuild. So it's really just the logistics of everyday business and administration. 10% of the cuneiform tablets we have are literature, poetry. Some of them are funny sayings, like there's a saying, "Where cosmeticians are, there is slander." Basically, wherever there's a hairstylist, there's gossip. Which, it still stands today. Oh my gosh. Human beings, we think we're so different, and yet we're all the same. We always gossip with our hairstylists. Our next video is going to be looking at the region in which we find most of these early forms of cuneiform, Sumer.